Hey guys, we're going to talk about how to scrape and sand and polish horns and show you my process here. So I have a couple horns here on my lap, and basically the first thing you want to do is start with selecting the horn. So I'm going to be demonstrating it on this piece right here. You want to start with inspection first, and so you're going to look at the ends here where it's been cut off, and right in here you can see that there's a crack. So this isn't a huge deal, it doesn't go too far down in, and I'm going to band this with copper when I'm done. These two are very similar, so this more or less is what you're going to get out of this one at the very end. There's a white layer of calcified material on here. So you can selectively leave this on or take it off. On this horn, I took almost all of it off except for these little spots right here because it left some interesting texture. On this one, there was very little black at the bottom here, so not much contrast, so I decided to leave on some of the calcified horn there, because otherwise it would just be all of this color in here and look a little boring, honestly. As far as tools that I use, I'm just going to be scraping with just the marking knife that I made that I've been using for almost everything lately. The big thing with the knife is that you want to make sure it's sharp. If it's not sharp, you're just going to be wasting a lot of time scraping because it's not going to work very efficiently. But you can use anything, any knife that you have around, really. Pocket knives work great for this. They're easy to hold in the hand. But using like your nice chef's knife from the kitchen is not a good idea. There's not enough meat behind the edge to support the scraping. So that's it. This is pretty much the only tool that I'm going to be using until I get to the finish sanding, and I'll show that a little bit later. You can do this if you want to speed the process up and you have an angle grinder with a flat disc on it. You can use this. You're going to need to wear a dust mask when you're sanding it because it kicks up horn dust everywhere and it's not something you want to be breathing. I prefer to use hand tools whenever possible because I enjoy the peace and quiet and kind of the meditative state that you get into when you're doing that. The other issue with using power tools like this is that you have to have a very, very light touch because this will leave divots all over the place in your finished product. That's how I ground this one, and you can see right in here, these are divots left from the grinding, and so these are going to get covered up with copper banding later, so I didn't bother sanding them out. But things happen quickly with power tools, and in my opinion with this, it's just a whole lot easier to just go slow and take your time with it, and you end up with still a really nice finished product. So I'm going to show you how I scrape. There's basically a couple things to look out for. As you're doing the rough scraping, you want to be holding the knife at slightly, as it's facing you, slightly less than a 90-degree angle, kind of steep, and that's going to take off material very quickly. As you get closer to the finish layers, what you can do is you can lower the angle of the knife, and that's going to take off less material and also leave a smoother finish. One of the things that happens when you're using the steep angle to take off a lot of material is that the knife skips and it'll leave small lines perpendicular to the line of travel, and so you'll need to scrape or sand those out. And the easiest way to get rid of them is to lessen the angle, lessen the pressure, and then scrape the chatter lines that you get in there. And so you'll get the feel for it as you start scraping. As far as how far down to take the scraping, you're going to go through first these rough layers that you see on this raw horn, and then you're going to get down to this calcified layer in here that's a lot of white, and there's really interesting patterns that can show up here. Some of this is damage, you know, where the horn was being rubbed up against something. So you can choose to leave that on, and then this will get smoothed out and kind of blended when it comes time to sand. Or you can scrape the whole way through that, and you just end up with just the translucent horn that's left. And so it's more of an artistic choice, an artistic decision more than anything. So it's kind of up to you how far you want to take that. So here's an interesting thing that you'll find. Sometimes there are little bits that are peeling up, like right in here, and if you feel the knife edge catching on those, you want to turn the horn around and scrape the other way so you can level those out. You get too many catches, then you start building up ridges in the horn, and then that makes it difficult to scrape and get a nice uniform, smooth finish. So we'll turn that around. And then we have this really rough patch to get out. And so I'm going to spend a little bit more time working on this, and you got to kind of scrape that from all directions to get that down, because these layers right here are popping up. And so we don't want to leave anything sticking up like that, so we have to scrape that down to the next solid layer. The other thing that we have going on is that there's a lot of grooves in here. And so we're going to be scraping that down so that these, until we get to the bottom of these grooves, so that we have a nice uniform, smooth finish. Alright, so we've got this all sanded to 240. Now the last thing we want to do for this step is to make sure all the sanding scratches are going in the same direction as the flow of the horn. You can see there's this spot right in here where there's some swirl marks, and so what we're going to do is take the sandpaper, and in one direction only, we're just going to go like this. We're going to go the whole way around a couple times, following the line of the horn. The next thing that we're going to do is take care of this crack. Alright, so we are going to fill this gap in here, this crack, with super glue. So we need to do a little prep first. You need a file to file down any rough spots, like right in here on the gap. You need some baking soda. You're going to need some super glue and some masking tape. We're going to use baking soda, which acts as a gap filler and also as an accelerator for the super glue. Blow it out from any dust, and now we have the crack all ready and smoothed out. It's right here. It's kind of tough to see because of the lighting, but we have that all smoothed out. So now what we're going to do is apply some masking tape to cover up the outside of the crack, because we don't want super glue just dripping out everywhere. I'm just going to take a pinch, and we're going to put it on. We're going to kind of rub it in. Do that 2 or 3 times and push all that baking soda into the crack. And then we're going to very carefully drip the super glue onto the baking soda. And we're going to let that soak in. Alright, so this is set. So I'm just going to file this out and then finish with some 240 grit sandpaper. And we'll take the masking tape off. We'll hit the area with the crack, the sandpaper. So that's where the crack was, and any splitting that might have happened as a result of that is now alleviated. So here we have a little preview of what the finished product will look like. We're ready to even up the top surface here and move on to finish sanding and then polishing. We'll hit this with the 240 real quick, and then we'll move up to 400, then 800, and then 1200. And then you also want to just take off that sharp edge that's on the inside.
Copy.
Break the sheets down into smaller sizes, fold it in thirds, and then this provides some extra grip where it can't slide because you have the smooth side on the back against the rough side here. And what we're looking to do is get rid of all of the scratches from the 240. This is what I use to clean out the inside. This is just a bit of twisted wire, 3 strands, with some steel wool on the end. Okay, so this is ready to be rinsed now, and you can already see with the fine sanding that we've done, if you even just rub it with your palm, even that serves to polish it a little bit. So we're going to go rinse this off, get all the dust out of any of the cracks, especially down here. At this part, rinse out the inside, and then we'll move to buffing it. I don't really recommend this setup. I don't have a dedicated buffing wheel set up yet. So I just have a drill clamped in a vise, clamped to a board to stabilize it, and we'll just put a clamp on the trigger to turn the drill on. What I'm going to do is apply some of the pink compound that you can see in the back right there onto the wheel. So there we have it, finished horn, all buffed up, and just ready for the end cap here, and we have to seal up the hole, and then we'll do the copper fittings up top as well. But this is what it looks like after all the buffing. Super nice shine. You could totally get this by hand, just with some polishing compound and cloth and lots of rubbing. This just happens way quicker. So that's that.